Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We've seen the detailed judgment on the bat symbol case as far as the PTI is concerned. We'll be talking about the ramifications of this detailed judgment, what it means. Of course, we saw a lot of political rhetoric from the PTI as a political party after this decision came out. We'll be talking about what the legal angle of it, and of course, as far as the judges are concerned, they've gone deeply into the reasoning of this decision. We'll be talking about that, and a little later on we'll also be talking about of course the candidates that are were allowed today by the Supreme Court to contest elections, and overall what this means for the allegations of, again, level playing field which were earlier being levelled by one particular party. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me today Saif Jamshed Baryar, who's a political analyst. Thank you so much for being with us today. We also have with us Irfan Ghauri, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us. And advocate Hafiz Khokar, who's a legal expert. We'll also be joined by Barrister Talha Chaudhry, who's a legal expert. Saif, before I go into the legal side of things, of course, there was a lot of criticism by, of course, the aggrieved party as far as this case is concerned, the bat symbol and its ramifications for the political process, and the fact that, of course, the political angle that this decision was consistently given. The legal angle of it, the legal reasoning of it is now there in front of us. How, looking back, how do you look at the political criticism that had ensued after the judgment itself?
Thank you for having me here, Mahrukh. The only, I think, ramification of it or repercussion of it is that this decision came in a little late. I think elections call for a little political optimism, at least 2-3 months before the actual voting process begins. Because from the idea of the ballot decisions, from the idea of the printing decisions to all the legalities that the Election Commission has to meet, I think it's a country of 250 million people, and the voter turnout has been incredibly high since 2013, after we have had the idea of experiencing a transition towards somewhat of a transparent democratic process in this country. So I genuinely believe that maybe the decision was right in legal terminology, but the decision came in a little late. Had it been a little earlier, I think it would have been given an impression of more political optimism to begin with. And alongside political optimism, I also very dearly do believe that the average voter out there is not that literate. We are living in a country that still talks about literacy more than education. You've got almost 70% people in this country who are considered literate enough only with the idea of identifying symbols and with only the idea of maybe writing their name. That is the definition of a literate in countries like Pakistan.
But the issue for the court was one of intra-party elections, and the fact that when it was before the Supreme Court, I think I'll go to Hafiz on this. Hafiz, when it came to the Supreme Court, in the normal course of things, does it not take much longer for cases to be heard in the Supreme Court?
Mahrukh, to the extent of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, the first time the matters came before the Supreme Court of Pakistan after the order of the Peshawar High Court, and the Peshawar High Court issued the order in January 2024, this year. So there is no, delay in the Supreme Court of Pakistan. The process initiated for the intra-party elections started in May 2021. And then there was a series of problems within the PTI and the Election Commission of Pakistan, and there was some extension of election for the intra-party, and then there was a first show cause notice, then there is a second show cause notice, and ultimately the matter was decided on the 23rd of November 2023. And when it was announced by the Election Commission of Pakistan, first the PTI complied the order and hold the election on 2nd of December, and simultaneously they approached to the Lahore High Court against the order of the Election Commission of Pakistan at the 23rd. So all has been discussed by the Supreme Court of Pakistan. There is no delay on the part of the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that in the normal course of things, and before I go to Barrister Talha, Irfan Sahab, in the normal course of things, we have to, why is it that there have to be extraordinary circumstances for even the leaders of this country or the political parties? In this instance, the case was heard quite, in a speedy manner by the Supreme Court, and also the decision had to be on legal merits. I mean, of course, the political side, the level playing field, all of those things are something that perhaps are secondary to what was before their lordships. Isn't that true?
Mahrukh, yeah, that's true that those things should have been considered, but when it comes to the courts, we know, I mean, intra-party elections, that's a issue that in Pakistan, it should be a very serious issue, because it's not only the PTI, but other parties as well. What we have seen, and that almost all the parties except one or two, they have a proper mechanism where they hold proper local intra-party elections.
It was done in a hasty manner. They've also highlighted factually, you know, the instances which don't seem to make quite that much sense as far as the locations were changed.
Yes, and here it is, you know, the election commission actually, because it was election commission that you can say there's a criticism on them that they have been, you know, subjective rather, you know, in that they picked few parties, except I mean, maybe they were saying they have an opinion that what they analyze is in accordance with the party constitutions, I mean the constitutions of the parties.
So there invariably is.
The reality is, the ground reality is that when it came, it affected a political party, a major political party, and it will have its ramifications, and those ramifications would be very serious.
Okay,
we can
so the
discuss
question
on
is really simple for me, and I'm going to go to Barrister Talha Chaudhry. Hafiz, I will come back to you. Ji, Barrister Talha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
The question is a simple one. Are these considerations, when we talk about these political considerations, when we talk about the political ramifications of this decision, and the fact that, you know, of course, it will have political ramifications if one major political party you know, is not allowed to have its symbol, are they going to supersede the legal considerations their lordships have to consider when a question like this is before them as a lawyer, and when there are factual legal reasons for holding it, you know, against the symbol in this manner?
Thank you for having me. The question and its answer is very simple. That nobody is above the law. Whether it is PTI, whether it is non-league, whether it is People's Party, or whatever is a party, we have to look at the law, and the judges have correctly interpreted and applied the law on the current situation. I agree with the Hafiz Saab that the decision was, the timing was very crucial of the decision. We have to look at the law. They have applied the law properly, and I think we should be showing confidence on the judiciary that they have upheld the law, and indirectly they have upheld the constitution. And being the protector of the constitution, the judges have upheld the constitution, and I think it is a very good decision. Considering its ramifications, of course, it will have political ramifications.
What is if you've gone through the judgment, you know, what is it that you feel? I mean, of course, the grounds themselves are quite clear as far as, you know, legally speaking, as far as this decision is concerned.
I think it is a very good decision. Any lawyer, if reads the judgment and look at the law on the point, and the judgment is right on the point.
Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Hafiz Saab. Hafiz Saab, let's look at the you know, as far as the reasons as far as this decision is concerned. Let's go a little bit into what the lordships have said.
Mahrukh, the first thing would be that every time you are not politically or legally right, and you have to go by the law. I mean, and when you are having such a confrontation in Pakistan, and you are speaking about the supremacy of the law and the constitution, then you need to be very careful. Three things are very important in this judgment. There are 38 pages judgment. Three things are very important. One is either there is a rather mala fide on the part of the Election Commission of Pakistan, because this is the primary question which might trigger the PTI for setting aside the order of the 22nd of December or upholding the order of the Peshawar High Court. So there was no mala fide attributed to the Election Commission of Pakistan. Number two, what is the scope of the Article 17? We all about the Article 17, that every person has a right to form an association, to be part of the political party. But the law says, the constitution says there are certain restrictions, and the restriction is that the section 201 to 215 of the Election Act 2017 deals in pursuance of the Article 17 of the Constitution about the enlistment of the political parties and then about the allocation of the symbols. Interestingly, the Article 17 has been amended 5 times in the constitutional history of Pakistan. The first it was amended in 1974, and then lastly it was amended in the 18th Amendment. Then we are talking about the judgment of the Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto case, and that judgment was in that context when there was a ROPA Act of Section 21, and that time it was the discretion of the returning officer at that time that he should allocate the election symbol if there is a contesting between the 2 candidates, and the matter brought to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and that amendment was made by General Ziaul. Just the elections to be held in a non-party base. You go for the party, but it is the discretion of the returning officer, and that was rejected by the Supreme Court of Pakistan. It says that the political parties' roles are very important. So we should not go into a mix with the Article 17 or the Benazir Bhutto case. The law is very much clear.
The law is very
clear. The section the law, the Section 215 regarding the legal consequences, it is still in the field.
Let's go into the law a little bit more, but I also want to talk to Saif Sahab. When you make an argument like the fact that this was made consistently, and I think even after the proceedings it has been said that why not other political parties, how relevant do you think an argument like this is? When there's something before the court, they're supposed to adjudicate on that particular matter, and to say that, why don't you look at another Tom, Dick and Harry or whatever, that these kind of arguments have, the reason why I'm mentioning them is because they've played a significant role on social media in furthering a debate, in fueling a narrative that has no real cognitive value.
Mahrukh, absolutely this debate is irrelevant. Now the first thing is that the law is based on precedent. The law is based on what has been happening before in front of the Honorable Court and what precedents have been set before. Now if you even look at Pakistan People's Party, they even lost their symbol. It's not really a big deal. Political parties, if they're not complying by the rules of procedures of the game, by the Election Commission's rules, or the Election Ordinance of 2002, or the Re-Amendment Act that happened in 2017 as well, the Elections Amendment Act. Election Commission of Pakistan is absolute authority, and as a body it has absolute autonomy. There are 2 different things, but they're very much related, authority and autonomy, to establish a level playing field, number 1. And number 2nd, if why one particular party? Definitely so, when it is one particular party that has led irregularities and gross irregularities in their entire campaign.
And came to their lordships because of somebody who was a member of the party.
Member of the party, and there's someone who's coming in from the party and he's saying that my particular party has not played fair. Then Election Commission of Pakistan has absolute entirety of authority in order to establish the fairness of play. Democracy has to be internalized within the political parties first, then it can be externalized to the masses.
But the question is, when we talk about Irfan Sahab, when we say that democracy has to be internalized, I think Saif is very right, but the question is whether we have the right to explore or investigate that democracy within other political parties. The court will only do that if that is before them. So to relegate that into the unfairness arena is something that's fueling, like I said, a narrative.
Mahrukh, I think when it comes to the courts and the legal aspects, or panelists on the legal minds, they can debate better on that. But what we see here is that when it is these provisions are applied subjectively, like in 2018, February 2018, before the Senate elections, it was PMLN that became victim of that. Similarly, this time another political party that bagged 16 million votes, which is almost 32% of the total votes cast. So for the people who were supporters or who were the voters of that party, this would have an implication that is that would cast serious doubts on the credibility and acceptance of the election itself.
But what is the court to do? In this case, when this matter landed in the court and the way that it came to the Supreme Court after the Election Commission going.
That's what I'm saying. The courts they had, but when it comes to on political parties side, when you see that argument that I mean it's the law should be implemented to on everyone, and when it is implemented on some of them, and where my point is that it's the Election Commission, the base is over there. If you probe the elections of political parties, of major political parties,
then maybe
I don't think anyone would be in a position that would stand the
scrutiny. But the
true
question
scrutiny
is the court going to probe? That's what I'm saying. Is the court going to
No, the
unilaterally
court
say
can't- the court
that,
can't
oh well,
probe itself.
now I've
It is-
decided I'm going to probe, for example, any other political party. I'm going to start probing their intra-party elections unless it comes to them.
Yes, that's the point.
And
So that came to the court, and the court has adjudicated
They
that.
Let
made
me-
the court a body of political mediation actually.
That's what it seems like. And of course, to make it a party in all of this, which is a consistent, and I want to come to that later with regard to the acceptance of candidates also. Talha, there's also a lot, when we look at what happened as far as the proceedings themselves are concerned, there was to look into the intra-party elections. I think one of the arguments that was made was whether it was integral to probe the intra-party elections, and whether just the fact that the intra-party elections had been held should alone have been sufficient to satisfy the court, according to the law, according to the Elections Act.
The intra-party elections are actually very crucial for the democracy, and they have to be held as per the constitution, which was not held in this case, in the PTI case. Before moving on, I would like to point out that PTI was not the only party that was facing this challenge. All Pakistan Muslim League was delisted, and I think Election Commission has given a very lenient view regarding PTI, and they should have held intra-party elections. Just providing a certificate would not be enough to hold that they went the intra-party elections were held transparent and in a legal manner. And I think this is what was the main point in this whole scenario, that turned the judges' point towards it.
Gee, Saif, there's also I want to link this. Of course, there's another issue. There's we saw the acceptance of candidates by the Supreme Court again today. Again, we've had a lot of, this time, we've had a lot of calls for this being unfair, this being against the law, this being, people unanimously being held away from the electoral process. Then, what happens to the decisions today?
Mahrukh, before the program actually began, I was benefiting from Khokar Saab's legal wisdom. And he told me very much clearly that almost 90% of the candidates who were disgruntled by the side of the ROs, they've been given the right to political participation. Now that's number one, that if you were saying, oh, the Supreme Court is not fair, oh, this is not really a level playing field, and you were basically putting severe and gross allegations on the highest body that, number one, dispenses justice, and number two, you were also trying to make the highest court of law a body of political mediation. I think those things have been buried today. There's only one particular candidate left who has not been granted the permission to contest. Even candidates who had been named in offences that are known as criminal in nature, not maybe that harsh of an offence like murder or extortion or something like that, but civil offences, well, they have been given the permission to contest as well. So I think the very idea of the court being a political affiliate to maybe the other side of the game, the other side of the story, I think that has been buried today. And now all the candidates of PTI should accept one thing, that after today, they should not be dragging the court into the matters that have been a part of a political history. If today this particular party is taking leaps and bounds forward in the criticism of the Supreme Court, this particular party was taking leaps and bounds forward to support this very court when decisions were coming in their favor, and when PMLN had similar position back in 2018. So I think it's the idea that I read a very wonderful statement by Nawaz Sharif today. And he said that he would never again want a prime minister to be sent off in a very unceremonial fashion, as prime ministers have been sent for. Now, this is the political race that we actually need to achieve, and it can only be achieved when we unanimously accept that let the court do what it is best at.
Hafiz, these acceptances, legally speaking, how do you look at them?
Mahrukh, I will take a minute on the judgment of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Being a student of law, there are 4 grounds on which you are challenging the action of any hierarchy of Pakistan, either it is administrative authority or it's a quasi-judicial. One is the jurisdiction was not exercised properly. Second was the mala fide. Third was the discrimination. And the fourth was that the law has been violated or the rules has been violated. So these are the 4 areas. But in that particular case, the admission was made by the PTI before the Election Commission of Pakistan that there was some problem within their constitution and they have not appointed their election commissioner and by the Secretary General. And what was the reason? They are saying we have a short of time. So the short of time is not excusable under the law when the matter was started since May 2021 and it drags into January 2024. So all 4 points were never raised before the Supreme Court of Pakistan. And in 2 days proceedings, Supreme Court simultaneously asked about the mala fide, about the violation of law, about the discretion which has not been properly exercised. But they were unable to speak in front of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and consequently when the law says that you have to hold the intra-party election, and if you are not following according to law section 209, and then there is a consequence, the section 215 of the Election Act, and the law is in the field, and still it has not been challenged or declared ultra vires by any court of law. So this is the one aspect. The second aspect about the blame games of our judicial system in Pakistan, it is one very unfortunate. For the last many years, we are seeing if we receive a judgment in our favor, we publicly saying.
Hafiz, these candidates who've been accepted today, let's try to stay on the point. They're, how do you look at their acceptance at this time? Of course, there's a lot that is being said even now by the political party as far as, it's being late and all that.
No, this is not the issue. This is the issue is that because the election schedule has been dragged into February 2024. So otherwise there is a process. The process, this is a returning officer, then there is election tribunal, then you come to the Supreme Court of Pakistan. And in a returning officer, if we compare the rejection side from judicial officers at that time, 2013, it is more higher than the 2023 of this election, and that was about 13–14%, and now it's less than that of 2013. Now the second is all these candidates who filed against the returning officers before the election tribunals, almost 85–90% their appeals were accepted. And in that, who challenged the Supreme Court of Pakistan, because I was also in one of the case before the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and Supreme Court have had a broader look on this side, and they have not gone into the much technicalities, and they set aside the decision of the election tribunal. So we believe on our system, we should believe on our judicial system in Pakistan, in the courts. And then you're saying that
but how does this change? I'm saying that let's come.
No, this is not a change. What the Supreme Court is doing, in accordance with law. Number one. Number two is if there is a problem and there have been a deviation from their precedent, then we will say that why the Supreme Court has been deviating. But if it is a consistent practice of the Supreme Court of Pakistan on these issues, then we should honor and respect the institution.
Irfan Sahab, how, when we drag the courts into the political foray, it is invariably done by one or another political party. And then what happens is that, when then there is the criticism, then there is, a lot of abuse also. We've seen in the past that unfortunately abuse has been hurled at judges of the courts also. So there is, now it has become unfortunately something that is also part of your normal political rhetoric. How do we take a step back from this then? When we look at the acceptances, like we said, we've earlier said that so many of these, I think 95% of these have been accepted as far as, and now we've seen, as far as these other main candidates, as Chaudhry, Pervez-e-Rai, or we talk about Sanam Javed, a lot of these major, candidates whose their papers have now been accepted by the Supreme Court.
Yes, Mahrukh, I think this is issue that we have been facing, in every election. Reason being,
do you think it's the same? Do you think would you rate it to that same level?
In last elections, we had the same issue that lots and lots of candidates, their nominations were rejected, and then ultimately when higher forums, when they came there, they were accepted. The thing is that, you know, when it comes to such matters, there should be a clear checklist. You know, a person who qualifies these things, when there are ambiguity, like, you know, in 62 and 63 article, where that had been applied, you know, in so many ways.
So we have a clarification on that now, you know.
We have, but there are many other things, like there was one example, one of the politicians, he was saying that his nominations were rejected on the basis that a gas bill that was due in January, you know, that was due in January, he didn't pay it. You know, those should not be the, I mean, there should be some clear cut lines that these are the qualifications, I mean, to qualify for the for contesting an election. And on the RO's level, because, you know, when it comes to the appellate courts and then, you know, to the Supreme Court, and the election schedule as per law is, you have a certain limit, you know, you have to conduct those elections once you have, you know,
saying that
announced
it needs, the law needs clarity.
And now here, the issue is that, you know, in Election Commission today, I was reading a report that Election Commission today, they were opposing it because they were saying that we have already sent the you know, ballot papers for the for printing, and this much has been done, and so we have to do.
So now they have to include, yes.
So to avoid that, we should have a mechanism at the basic level where they originate from.
And let me go to Barrister Talha on this. Talha, do you think that there is perhaps we need, you know, there needs to be clarity as far as this acceptance, the process of acceptance, you know, the overall process when we look at challenging candidature is concerned, or we look at the scrutiny, all of that, overall that process needs to be more clear, it needs to be more speedy overall, and this issue itself has pointed out to problems within that.
Yes, of course, Mahrukh. It is a matter of fundamental right of every candidate to contest election from their respective constituencies, and there should be a checklist before the ROs issued by the Election Commission to look at the factors that they have to consider before rejecting a nomination paper. So, right now, what court is doing, according to me, the court is actually doing what the ROs should have been doing. They should have had a checklist to check whether
there needs to be better training, perhaps, as far as the on the RO level.
Yes, of course, these matters should not even come before the court. You look at the data; it is like 85% to 95% of the candidates are appealing to the higher forums. Why is it happening? There should be a proper training given by the Election Commission. They should be actually training.
When we look at a lot of the issues that have come to the Supreme Court, perhaps there needs to be a better filtering process, and, you know, invariably, I think this is one of the criticisms overall also, that everything lands up in Supreme Court, unfortunately.
Yes, I was actually reading somewhere that a candidate was rejected his nomination paper based on an FIR that he burned some tires. And I mean, you are taking away a fundamental right from a candidate to contest elections guaranteed by the Constitution. Based on what? He's not a murderer, he's not a kidnapper. We have to set out boundaries. Nobody is saying that we should take criminals to the parliament, but we have to set out a certain boundaries and limits. The ROs are rejecting outrightly every nomination paper. Like, I mean, it is beyond imagination what ROs are doing. It is understandable.
Let me come back to Hafiz. Do you think there needs to be clarity within the law? There needs to be better training of the ROs. There needs to be less discretion as far as the ROs are concerned. What do you think?
Well, there is a solution and there is a way forward.
Okay.
The solution is that the holding of the election is the responsibility of the Election Commission of Pakistan, and the Election Commission of Pakistan should take this responsibility. Okay. They should not outsource this responsibility some time to the judicial officers of Pakistan, and some time to the bureaucrats of the Pakistan. And they're giving the responsibility at that time when there is a nick of time of the election commission for the holding of elections.
Okay.
So the primarily responsibility to checking the nomination paper should lie with the election officers who are directly under the supervision and control of the Election Commission of Pakistan. And in every district there is a district election commissioner. The hierarchy of the Election Commission of Pakistan should, all the state functionaries, they should assist the Election Commission of Pakistan, and the Election Commission of Pakistan should take and assume the role of the returning officers in Pakistan. So that would be in a way that the people who
But
been
that
in the
would mean
process.
a lot more. So their own members, you're saying members of the Election Commission should be doing this, then that would mean.
No, I'm not talking about the member of the Election Commission. There is a hierarchy of the Election Commission of
Okay.
Pakistan. This is the top level, the members. Then there is the provincial election commissioners, and then there is a district returning officers.
But do you
When
think they
you-
have that kind of manpower? That
Definitely they have. I mean,
I
you
doubt
need. Do you need one district returning officer for every district? And at that time, we have 144 districts in Pakistan. 144 district election commissioners, they are there. So primarily the responsibility of taking the nominations paper and deciding on the nomination paper should lie with the Election Commission of Pakistan. They should enhance their capacity, and if they need more people, they should increase
Ji.
their HR.
Ji,
And the
Saif.
second thing important would be on that particular side is we need to extend the period of the election schedules. We are very much stick on that, and that particular situation, this is again the embarrassment for the Election Commission of Pakistan when the law says it is a 90 days period. Why they submit a Supreme Court of Pakistan that will hold election within 56 days, and then given the schedule, why they are not saying that we will hold the election in 90 days, and in that particular situation there is a time for the nominations paper, there is a time for the scrutiny, there is a time for the
But
high
in this
courts, and
case-
then there is a time of the Supreme Court of
But
Pakistan.
hasn't there been unprecedented delay anyway in this case?
There is no delay on that part, because when you have announced the
There
election,
has been a lot of delay as far as the elections are concerned. That's what I mean.
if we talk about the Article 51(5) of the Constitution, to the extent of the general election in Pakistan relating to the National Assembly and Sindh Assembly and Balochistan Assembly, there is no delay on the part either by the Election Commission of Pakistan, or there is no responsibility lies with anyone, because the election scheduled to be held within 90 days if the process of the census completed under Article 51(5) of the Constitution.
Right,
So
I
might be there
understand.
is a debate on, because there has been a controversy since
yes.
April 2022 that need to be resolved. But more importantly is that the Election Commission of Pakistan should play its active role and to do whatever required under the law and the
Saif Sahib,
Constitution
do you
and
think
the
it's
judgment of the
possible?
Supreme
Do you
Court.
do you agree with Hafiz Sahib? You think that role, perhaps, we need the Election Commission to take the responsibility, and perhaps outsourcing it is what leads to this much confusion and the cries for unfairness? Perhaps Hafiz Sahib is making a valid point here.
Mahrukh, Hafiz Saab does share a valid point here, but the issue over here is that there's one thing that we say Election Commission should do this, Election Commission should do that. Then there's another thing what Election Commission ought to do. There's a difference between what Election Commission should do, what it ought to do, and what it can do in the
yes.
circumstances. Now, this debate that we're having right now here, this is rather, a debate of policy. Policies take time to happen. If you're talking about what Election Commission should do and making it ought to do that, we need to bring in parliamentary reforms. Parliamentary reforms can only come in when there's an elected, parliament.
Parliament,
And
yes.
that parliament basically debates on the workability and the feasibility or the manpower of the Election Commission to begin with. And if even there has to be another body, one body is Election Commission of Pakistan that is responsible for conducting the elections, right? Then there's another body that should be established maybe at the sidelines in order to monitor the candidates as well. Now, in refined democracies, there are candidate monitoring cells. These candidate monitoring cells, throughout that parliamentary process, make sure that these candidates are scrutinized, and if someone fails to level up to that scrutiny, they are not issued nomination papers to begin with. Now, these things but actually do take a lot of time. Given right now we're living in an era of great political volatility, we need to be arriving at diplomatic conclusions. Diplomatic conclusions that are acceptable to every party out there. So maybe what Election Commission ought to do is something else, but what it can do, it's something else.
Irfan Sahib, what's your
Right
thought?
now,
I only want to add.
Hafiz Sahib, one second.
One
I'll come back to you. Ji, Irfan Sahib.
If it doesn't matter, I think you know, if it is the person sitting, the person is from the judiciary, or it is from the election commission,
Okay.
or it's from the
District
administrative.
management.
The thing is, unless you don't have clear rules, there are certain examples like the one we have already quoted. There was one instance where a person who had applied for 2 telephone lines, PTCL telephone lines, he shifted to a new place. One of them he used, the other he didn't, and then he, you know, asked the PTCL to disconnect it. And there was a bill pending. That bill was, I mean, few hundred rupees or something, but according to the candidate, he didn't know, he didn't get it. On the basis of these things, because the mechanism is that your opponent, they come up with some objection, and when they come up with some objection, of course they would try to, you know, level anything, even if it is it's very small.
You're saying that
So
the discretion should be minimal, so that
yes,
there is
and
so
it
much
should be
clarity.
very clear. Rules of games should be very clear. There should be, you know, clear. I mean, these points. If somebody qualifies for that, that is, and then leave it to the people. You know, that is what the people would
Leave an open field and let people decide whatever they.
Yeah,
you know,
the basic
whoever
things
they
should
want
be
to.
a person who is qualifying for that. They should be, you know.
Gee, Talha, there's, you know, this debate of whether there has to be, whether it's the election commission that has to, you know, it should be people from within the election commission that should be undertaking all of this, or whether it's the members of judiciary, or, you know, whoever, the way that it's structured at this time. It's about discretion versus, you know, it's about who has the authority to do it. If we minimize the discretion and there's clarity as far as the rules are concerned, perhaps we'll see less of this, you know, outcry of fairness, unfairness. Perhaps, you know, now that we are looking at things getting political towards the end.
Mahrukh, the thing is, the discretion is a very wide word, and it should be exercised in a very judicial and you can say very proper manner. It cannot be used arbitrarily. Like ROs are using their discretion without any criteria, without they're putting their mind into work.
Rules. It's about the criteria, it's about the rules that have to be laid down in a very clear manner, so that there is no arbitrariness, you know,
Yes,
that
there
we are
should-
looking at as far as these ROs are concerned.
Yes, there should be a criteria to even exercise the discretion. Like you are giving free hand to ROs to object nomination papers and reject nomination papers on silly things. Like opponent will always object, they will always come up with something that will put their opponent on a wrong side, and the ROs will have to exercise their discretion according to the facts in hand. They shouldn't be rejecting nomination papers on.
That you're also advocating, you're saying that the rules have to be very clear, and so that, you know, we see that the application is synonymous to you know, the rules, and there's no deviation and there's no arbitrariness that you're talking about. Fair enough. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Saif, Jamshed, Baryar, thank you for joining us. Hafiz, Ahsaan, Khokar Saab, thank you for being with us. Irfan Ghauri Saab, thank you for joining us. Barrister Talha, thank you for being with us. Overall, we've seen political parties, of course, you know, politicize decisions recently. Whether we look at the banning of the bat symbol is concerned, whether we look at acceptance of nomination papers are concerned. But the point is, where does the buck stop when we talk about this kind of narrative building, when we talk about this kind of you know, the kind of propaganda that ensues after decisions of the Supreme Court, and where will the buck stop, and where do we see clarity, where do we see acceptance of decisions whichever way they go, so that we see a political process that is clear, we see a political process that is garnered towards perhaps moving forward as a country, rather than polarization, rather than abuse, rather than hate within the political arena. Thank you so much for joining us today on